I am 38, have just lived through the most devastating 12 hours of my life, and my entire world has been erased. I need to get this out because I'm sitting in a cheap motel room, smelling like someone else's sweat and stale cigarette smoke, with my knuckles swollen and my soul hollowed out. My name is Mark, and as of last night, my marriage is over. I'm a regional sales manager, which means I travel a lot. It's the part of the job I've always hated, but it paid for our beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, the one with the big oak tree in the front yard and the custom-built deck I spent all last summer constructing with my own 2 hands. Sarah, F36, my wife of 12 years, always said she hated the nights alone but understood it was for our future. We were talking about starting to try for a kid next year. We had a plan. A good one. A life built on what I thought was an unshakable foundation of trust and shared dreams. This week was a standard trip to Chicago. 3 days of meetings, client dinners, and lonely hotel rooms. The last dinner wrapped up early last night, and on a whim, I managed to get on a standby flight home. I was giddy. I'd surprise her. I pictured her face lighting up when I walked in, the way it used to when we were first dating, all those years ago. I even stopped at that ridiculously overpriced French pâtisserie at the airport to get her a box of those macarons she's obsessed with. They were carefully cradled in my carry-on, a little edible, I love you. I got an Uber home from the airport. The house was dark, which was normal for 11:30 p.m. on a weeknight. I remember feeling a little pang of disappointment. I'd hoped she might still be up watching Netflix, maybe dozing off on the couch. I'd carry her to bed, she'd stir and smile sleepily, and I'd feel like her hero. A stupid, romantic fantasy. I used my key, the quiet click of the lock sounding louder than usual in the sleepy street. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It was faint, but unmistakable, a mix of a candle she never burns, sandalwood, a gift from her mother she disliked, and a strange, sharp, aquatic cologne. Not mine. My brain registered it as a data point, filed it away under mildly odd, but didn't process it as a threat. I was still in my surprise bubble. I dropped my suitcase by the door with a soft thud and towed off my loafers. The macarons were in my hand, the cardboard box cool against my fingers. I walked towards our bedroom, a stupid, lovesick grin on my face. The master is at the end of the hall. The door was closed, which was a little odd. She usually slept with it open for the cat, a fat, orange tabby who was now nowhere to be seen. The silence felt thick. I pushed the door open. The light from the hallway sliced across the room, illuminating a scene that is now burned onto the back of my eyelids forever. There, in our bed, under the duvet we picked out together at Pottery Barn after weeks of deliberation, were 2 people. My wife, Sarah, her blonde hair fanned out on the pillow. And a man. A man I had never seen before. He had his back to me, a tanned, muscular back, and one of his arms was draped possessively over my wife's waist. The world didn't slow down. It exploded. The box of macarons fell from my hand. It hit the hardwood floor with a sickeningly delicate crunch, a sound of something fragile being irrevocably destroyed. Sarah's eyes snapped open. They met mine. The sequence of emotions was a brutal, high-speed film reel, confusion, then dawning horror, then sheer, unadulterated terror. It was the terror that confirmed everything. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a verdict. I didn't think. I didn't speak. A sound ripped out of my throat, a raw, guttural roar that didn't sound like it came from a human being. It was the sound of my heart tearing in two. I was across the room in 2 strides. The man, the stranger in my bed, jolted awake. He started to turn, his face a mask of sleepy confusion. He never had a chance. I grabbed him by the shoulder and yanked. He was heavier than me, solid with the kind of gym-built muscle I'd never had time for, but my rage had the strength of a dozen men. He tumbled out of the bed, naked and scrambling, hitting the floor with a heavy, satisfying thud. "Mark! Stop! Oh my God, stop!" Sarah was shrieking, scrambling back against the headboard, pulling the sheets up to her chin like that could shield her from this reality, like she was the victim here. But I wasn't looking at her. My entire universe had narrowed to this man, this intruder in my sanctuary. He was trying to get up, mumbling something. "Whoa, man, what the hell?" My fist connected with his jaw. The impact was a shocking, brutal crunch of bone and cartilage. A lightning bolt of pain flared up my own arm, but it was a distant, irrelevant thing, a message from a faraway land. He cried out, a choked gurgle as blood started to pour from his nose and mouth, dark and shocking against the pale wood of the floor. You fucking animal. In my house. I was on top of him, raining down blows. It wasn't fighting. It was demolition. My fists were just tools, pistons of pure, uncut hatred. I hit his face, his ribs. I felt something give under my knuckles, a rib, maybe. He was trying to cover his head, curling into a fetal position, but I was relentless. The room was filled with a symphony of violence, my animalistic grunts, his choked, wet cries, Sarah's piercing, hysterical screaming, and the wet, sickening thuds of impact. We crashed into the nightstand. The lamp I bought her for her birthday, the Tiffany-style one she loved and I'd saved for 3 months to afford, flew off and shattered into 1,000 colored pieces on the floor. The room plunged into near darkness, lit only by the sliver of hall light, turning the scene into a grotesque shadow play. "Alex, get off him. You're killing him." Sarah screamed. "Alex." She knew his name. The intimacy of it, her using his name in this moment, her concern for him, poured gasoline on the inferno inside me. It was the final betrayal, a verbal confirmation of the physical one. I don't know how long it went on. It felt like an eternity and a single second. Suddenly, there were hands on me, pulling me back. Strong, professional hands. I fought them, thrashing, still roaring, my vision a tunnel of red. "Sir! Sir, stop! Police! Let him go!" The world snapped back into a different, sharper, more public focus. Blue and red lights were strobing through the windows, painting the wreckage of my bedroom, my marriage, in hellish, alternating colors. 2 police officers were hauling me off the man on the floor. Mr. Peterson, our elderly neighbor from across the street, was standing in my bedroom doorway in his plaid robe, his face as pale as parchment, his cell phone clutched in his trembling hand. I heard the screaming and the crashing, he stammered, his eyes wide with fear and morbid curiosity. It sounded like someone was being murdered. I called 911. I stood there, chest heaving, my breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. I looked down at my hands. They were slick and dark with his blood. My knuckles were split open, already swelling into grotesque, purple lumps. The man on the floor, Alex, was moaning, curled up, his face a pulpy, bloody mess. A paramedic was already kneeling beside him, barking codes into a radio. The next hour was a blur of fragmented, surreal moments. More paramedics arrived, filling the room with their efficient, clinical presence. They tended to Alex, loading him onto a gurney, an oxygen mask over his ruined face. One of them tried to look at my hands, but I jerked away. The physical pain was an anchor, the only real, honest thing in the room, the only thing keeping me from floating away into complete madness. An officer sat me down on the couch in the living room, our couch, where we'd cuddled and watched movies, where we dreamed aloud about our future. He asked me questions in a calm, measured tone that felt alien and offensive. "Can you tell me what happened, sir? Is that your wife, Sarah? Do you know the injured man?" I answered in monosyllables, my voice flat and dead. "I came home. No. No." I pointed to my suitcase by the door, my airport parking tag still visible. I showed him the crushed box of macarons. It felt absurd, presenting a dessert as evidence of my shattered life. Another officer was talking to Sarah in the kitchen. I could hear her crying, her voice a high, pathetic whine. She was saying things like, "It was a mistake," and, "I don't know what I was thinking." I didn't care. I felt nothing for her. Nothing but a vast, cold, howling emptiness where my love for her used to live. It had been eviscerated, all at once. The police, after conferring, determined it was a domestic disturbance with mitigating circumstances. Since I was the legal homeowner and had found an intruder in my bed, they weren't pressing charges against me for the assault. They called it understandable, if excessive. They took my statement and suggested, firmly, that I find somewhere else to stay for the night to cool off. The irony of that phrase, in the context of my ice-cold interior, was lost on them. Sarah left first. She packed a bag in the bedroom, her movements slow and jerky, avoiding looking at the blood on the carpet, the shattered lamp, at me. She walked past me on the couch without a word, without a glance, got into her car, and drove away. Probably to him. To the hospital. To tend to the wounds I inflicted on the man she chose over me. After the police left, after the paramedics, after Mr. Peterson gave me a sad, awkward pat on the shoulder and told me to hang in there, son, the silence descended. It was the loudest, most oppressive silence I have ever experienced. It was the sound of my life ending. I was alone in the corpse of my home. I looked around the living room. The photos on the wall, our wedding, a trip to Hawaii, us laughing at a friend's barbecue, covered in ketchup and bliss. They looked like pictures from a museum, from someone else's life. A life I had been loaned and had now been violently repossessed. I couldn't stay there. The smell of that fucking cologne was still in the air, mixed with the coppery tang of blood and the faint, sweet scent of crushed macarons. It was a nauseating cocktail of betrayal. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, threw in some clothes at random, my passport, my laptop, a toothbrush. I didn't look back. I couldn't. And now I'm here. The red roof in off the interstate. The room smells like industrial disinfectant and despair. The garish floral bedspread is stained. My hands throb with every heartbeat, a painful, rhythmic reminder of my violence. The adrenaline is gone, and all that's left is the void. The future we planned, the child, the growing old together on that deck I built, the life in that house, it's all gone. Erased in one single, violent moment when I pushed open my own bedroom door. The fuck-up wasn't coming home early. The fuck-up was building a life so fragile, so seemingly perfect on the outside, that one stranger in my bed could shatter it into a million unrecognizable pieces. I have nowhere to go from here. I am 38 years old, and I have to start my entire life over from a cheap motel room, with the image of my wife in the arms of another man seared permanently behind my eyes, and the taste of ashes in my mouth.